superintendent. I'm going to take one for our household since we have two
I have
little
more,
girls. Huh?
There's more out there if we need them.
Oh, okay. And so if you want one for your household, please raise your hand and I'll pass one out. They're awesome. I've heard
They're
the
free.
book.
No cost. They're free.
Oh, and the fellowship meal was scheduled at the park, but it is unfortunately a little bit too windy and chilly outside, so we're just going to do it in the fellowship hall.
I'll take that, Cassidy. Thank you. All right, thank you for making all this work, Mikey and Eric. So without further ado, like she said, not today, Satan. Unfortunately, with the transfer, some of my slides might be cut off, but at least you guys get to see, we get to proceed. So, okay. I don't know. We'll just do both. Okay, can everyone hear me? Okay, perfect. All right, so today, as it says on the screen, what's with your health? The unseen reality. And I'd like to start by asking you, what's holding you back from your best health? In my practice, I like to focus on optimal well-being and longevity. Just for context, all of my grandparents lived to be in their hundreds, or 90s, I'm sorry. Forgive me, 90s. And so that was quite a testament in my life to what practicing health measures and habits and prevention can do. So I hope that you guys can latch on to some of these things and practice them as well. All right, so the next question is, of course, what's obstructing your body's ability inside to heal, to function, and to thrive? Have you ever thought about this? Do you know? Well, what if there's an unseen reality inside your body that's being disrupted, neglected, or even misunderstood? Well, I don't know what the computer's doing. Well, today we're going to talk about that. The part that you don't see. The part most people never think about. Because the truth is, we are fearfully and wonderfully made. Even down to our innermost parts, based on Scripture. It says, "Do you not know that your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit within you, whom you have from God?" And one more. "So whether you eat or drink," we just heard this, "do whatever you do it all for the glory of God." So that is our focus. So back to the question. Are those parts working the way God intended? That's right. For most people, the answer is probably a quiet but clear no. And that's what I see in my practice all the time. In fact, we have wives of doctors and doctors themselves who in my program that I went through are going and asking their questions because they're realizing our medical system is failing them. All they can do is tell their patients, take this pill, do this, and it is only a bandage. It is not taking care of the problem. So I always wanted to be a doctor, and this is how I kind of do it without having to go to all the medical school years and all of their rigmarole to get the degree. But through my certification, I'm able to do all of it. And I praise God for that, because that's been what I feel I've been placed here to do, is help people with their health. Somehow, God gives me the information on how to do it. I pray about it, it comes to me, and it is there. So, what we have here today that I'm just going to show you now is a coverage of what it's like to be in your body the way God intended it to work, how it works, and how what you eat affects it. Later, we will cover how everyone is affected by different things like pollutants and toxins and things hiding in your everyday life in your home. That'll be very important to know because most people don't know about those things. All right. And it's sabotaging our health from multiple unseen angles. And if we don't know our enemy, again, unfortunately, the world, our government, and so on is not regulating these things very well. They're not caring about our health the way they need to. Okay, so let's peel back the layers and reveal the hidden forces of how things you put in your body, in and around your body, are quietly shaping our health. Getting into it, when you start looking at health, it all begins in the gut. And then it affects all the plumbing and electrical, if you want to speak that way. Electrical and plumbing and extremities. All right, so picture this with me. Your gut is like a garden hose connected to a spigot, branching out to various organs through splitters and smaller hoses. Does that make sense? Okay. If that main hose, the gut, is blocked or sluggish, then every part it feeds suffers too. Whether it's the filters, which are kind of like the receptors in your body, or it's the tanks, considered organs. If the source isn't clean and flowing, nothing downstream from it can function properly either. Okay? That might seem very simple, but we forget to think that way when we're humans. For some reason, we want to be able to go and do whatever we want. We want to be able to eat whatever we want and abuse, unfortunately, the body that God gave us instead of thinking simply like that. What we do, what we eat, always affects everything. So, with that knowledge in mind, more often than not, we discover that something foreign is in the way, obstructing, blocking, and festering in our bodies. Something that needs to be cleared or rerouted, and healing needs to begin. These things, as I mentioned before, can be environmental toxins, biological intruders, contaminants in your food and in your soil. We forget to think about that because I love gardening myself, but if you don't think about the soil's health that begins with when you garden, you do not have health in your soil. Your vegetables are kind of like cardboard. It doesn't matter that you're growing vegetables. That's healthy. God wants us to. It's organic or whatever. It has been grown in the best way you know how, but it is lacking all the nutrients that you thought you were getting. So we need to think about this. We also need to think about the medical and dental interventions such as surgeries or anesthesia that's been ever put into our bodies. That affects your body forever. It changes things. And we also have to think about how much we exercise. Are we sedentary? Unfortunately, if we are sedentary, and our gut will be sedentary too. That means if you don't get up and do things and aren't active, and I tell people this, if you are not working out, it doesn't matter if you're walking and you are an active person digging holes or gardening or whatever, if you are not getting in the gym and pumping some iron, like lifting weights and squatting and moving your body the way that God made it, kind of like a robot, you're working those joints the way they're supposed to bend and making them pivot, then you are not actually getting a workout in. You can sweat, you can work normally from day to day, but your body, especially your optimal well-being, is not going to be accomplished. If you want the kind of body you want, the shape and the toning that you want in your gut lining also, digging a hole or walking is not going to give you the muscular toning of your gut that you need. You have to work your abs for that. And it comes down to that as well. But as we get back into it, oh goodness, we must look at the gut itself. And don't look too much into this. It's overwhelming. This picture is just to show you that those little hairs, those projections we have here is your gut lining. It is your villi. and your microvilli. So if I am to take you through this, I hope I can do this. I'm going to have to come over here. Like I said, don't look at the entire picture and get overwhelmed. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Look at the big projection, little fingers on the right, or left, I'm sorry, it was the right for me. The left, and those are your villi. Now move to the very right, top right with me, to the microvilli. Those are each little hair. So you have like a finger, and each finger has multiple little hairs on top of it. And when you zoom in on each little hair, that is called a microvilli. And these absorb your nutrients and your vitamins for you. They are what actually create some of the good bacteria and everything. They are very important. So when we look at this, I mentioned muscle tone in your gut and your abs. That's important. But one of the first and most overlooked problems as well is dehydration. Who of us are drinking enough? If you want to know how much you're supposed to drink, it's how much you weigh divided by 2. So half of what you weigh is how much you should be drinking every day. In ounces. Thank you. I'm really glad someone mentioned that. Speaking, you can forget to mention some of the details here. All right. Along with lack of fiber, I've seen that, and we don't mean fiber pills. Fiber pills and laxatives and supplements aren't going to cut it. They actually slow down your gut and kill the microvilli. They stick like glue. You think they're making it much more lubricated and moist in there and doing their job. They might work for a while, but they are going to kill that gut lining. So what we need to do is actually think about using our food, which is called a prebiotic in medical classes, to actually do the work of fiber. It's called a prebiotic because that fiber gets in there and it feeds the good bacteria, and the microvilli gets some support with their functioning. It's kind of like a buffer, like a primer you're putting on a wall. Okay? And when you do that, you get it from your food, all from your food. However, without enough water, the gut and colon, let's go back one. The gut and colon lining dries out. It weakens their protective barrier and paving the way for irritation, sluggish digestion, and deeper dysfunction. I don't know if you've ever felt this, but I have felt it. If you've ever just had like 1 cup of water that was minuscule and you start cramping the next day or that evening, you feel so much pain down there, that's pretty normal. Dehydration is huge when it comes to your gut. All right, so we next have to talk about the insides, even deeper. Inside the gut are tight gap junctions is what we call it. And I'll jump to the next picture to show this. In between each villi, which is what you're seeing there, look at the picture on the left, by the way. Please focus on that one. In between each is what you see with the black dots. It is a passageway between each villi. These cells are going to go ahead and let tiny proteins in. It'll open and close when it's programmed. It's selectively programmed inside of itself to let vitamins in when it needs to and proteins that need to be absorbed. When they're blocked, which happens, it cannot work properly. Or the opposite, which we'll talk about, when they are loosened because they are hurt by what you eat, they remain stuck open. Okay? And then when you go to the second picture with me on the right, you see how many capillaries and arteries and blood streams we actually have going inside our gut lining. Does everyone see that? Okay? When those tight gap junctions are open and stuck open, which we'll talk more about, these particles of food or toxins in your food go straight into your bloodstream. And this is the stuff that starts to fester and gets stored in the body wherever it may go. It might be in the brain, it might be traveling to your liver, your kidneys. Based on what it is, it basically will be moved there, and then it can start to fester or just block everything. So, and then we have a lot of immune responses that occur. Your body starts trying to fight itself because it notices these foreign particles are not supposed to be there. So the gut lining, as I said, is a huge deal. If you go with me to the next picture, you will see on the left a picture of a healthy gut. On the right, leaky gut, as we call it, when it has those tight gap junctions that are open all the time and it's been damaged. So these same cells host vitamin receptors, as we talked about on the top of the villi, right? The microvilli? Very good. They also depend on structural integrity. A protective mucus lining shelters these structures and supports good bacteria in the gut. But when it's eroded by stress, sugar, alcohol, processed foods, or overuse of antibiotics, the gut becomes increasingly vulnerable to damage and dysfunction. Does anyone realize how much mucus it's showing there? You might have to put on your glasses, but when you actually look at it, you have the villi. I guess my nail. If you look at my nail, that'd be a good projection of what my microvilli looks like. So this is my villi. This is my microvilli. And on top of all that, you're supposed to have a mucus lining that's like that thick. Okay? Like that. And if you don't, and you have a leaky gut syndrome, you already have a breakdown that's leading directly to leaky gut. It's setting off a cascade of health problems that affect everybody, regardless of obvious sensitivities. But dairy is one of the things that can do this to you. Dairy contains hormones and casein proteins that are difficult to digest for everybody. And it triggers inflammation, mucus production, and weakens the gut lining. Similarly, all animal products contribute to gut blockage and slowing. They act like abrasives that scrape the gut lining and clog the intestinal walls. Kind of like glue. If you think about it, it becomes your cheeses, how sticky they are when you heat it up, it becomes like glue in the gut. You have to think about that. Like washing off a dish, that's what you're looking at in your gut. It's hard to get it off. All right? And that slows transit, as we call it. That's how quick things get out of your gut. You always want quick transit time in your gut. In fact, I wasn't going to mention this, but we all want to have health, so much so that you should be going to the bathroom, 2, 3 times a day. If you're not, that is medically called constipation. And I don't know about you, but that's a lot of fiber and water. Again, it comes down to those things that you have to get to do that. Okay? All right, so this slow transit time impairs detoxification. You want to be detoxing and keep those pathways open every day, 24/7, or you're starting to store toxins in the body. And it leads to what we call mucoid plaque buildup. Here's what I was talking about with the kind of like the glue. Which is blocking receptor sites, and it hinders nutrition absorption. All right, so we're not getting to that yet. As this begins to happen in your gut, you kind of get a ball of glue, like I said. And it starts to putrefy and decay within the gut, causing friction and injury. And it disrupts the gut's ability to cleanse and nourish the body. Is it making sense to everyone so far? Okay. Now, without this internal architecture intact, nutrient absorption declines and the immune system becomes overactive. I already mentioned that, but I wanted to drive that home. This causes allergies, chronic fatigue, brain fog, autoimmune conditions, and even cancer. The gut isn't just a digestive tube. As you can see here, it has a lot going on, a lot of things you have to keep alive and balanced. And it's a critical command center, as we can see. These abrasive foods not only strip away the protective mucus layer that I talked about, that's supposed to be quite extensive and thick, but it also contributes to dehydration itself. The more you get scraped out, your body pumps as much water as it can into the gut to release the waste. You're always in a state of dehydration then. And you have a sluggish gut. Without adequate hydration and protection, the gut loses its ability to perform peristalsis, the movement of your gut, which is why the muscle tone you need to do the peristalsis is important. And it doesn't do it properly anymore, resulting in constipation and toxic buildup, as you can see. Over time, this leads to chronic inflammation even more and weakened immune functions. I already said that, but again, I'm driving it home because you got to think about chronic fatigue means your fibromyalgia, your arthritis, your other joint problems you're having is coming from this. Especially when you talk about immune function, we need to think especially around the colon and rectal areas, unfortunately. You're going to have inflammation in those areas. Some of us know that and are experiencing it, unfortunately. But this is why diets high in meat and dairy, as I mentioned those before, animal products, are consistently linked with higher rates of gastrointestinal cancers. Now, in total, we have a couple things that actually create this scraping and damage and loss of integrity in the gut. We have, number one, gluten. Okay? I'll just go ahead and list them off. We're going to be reviewing them in just a minute. But gluten, dairy, meat, sugar, and excessive salt intake all creates this problem. They all contribute to gut dysfunction and leaky gut. Through their effects, they vary from person to person, but they often overlap with each other, creating more problems. Promoting inflammation, altering your gut microbiota, which means your gut bacteria. And let me explain something real quick. Your gut bacteria is always like, the only best way I can put it is if you have team 1 and team 2, it only depends on how many people you have in team 1 and team 2. The one that wins is the one that has the most people. So if you have the most bad bacteria in your gut, that is what is winning in your gut. They take over and they start reproducing like rabbits. If you have good bacteria, they take over and start populating the gut fully. So you always, have to keep everything at bay by just pretty much promoting good bacteria all the time. That is how you fight that off and counteract it. So, getting back to this, you will have what we call a compromised gut barrier then, that mucus lining, that lining health. As Dr. Amy Myers explains about gluten, it causes gut cells to release zonulin. Now we're getting into more of the technical pieces of gluten, the chemistry of it. Zonulin, a protein that can break apart your tight gap junctions in the intestinal lining. This breakdown opens the floodgates for inflammation and autoimmune triggers, even in those without any sensitivities, intolerances, and such as celiac disease or wheat intolerances. It's everybody. Dairy is the next one. And it not only affects the lactose intolerant. Casein, the very components of dairy, casein and whey itself trigger inflammation in everyone to varying degrees. It slows digestion and elimination. Again, you want quick elimination, so it's causing a problem. And as we get through this, it also causes overproduction of mucus from the dairy. Now, when we talk about mucus layers that are natural from the stomach, That's good, right? We want those. But when we talk about mucus, such as from eating dairy, this is kind of like pus. We have to think of the kind of mucus we're talking about. We are creating pus in our bodies when we eat dairy. It's not the right kind of mucus that we want to be feeding it. And that causes an overwhelming amount of this mucus to the gut barrier and your junctions between each villi. And it actually starts, it's kind of like a slip and slide then, if you want to call it that. Things still get into your bloodstream and your tight gap junctions quicker and easier. They just slide right in because nothing can close anymore either. All right. So then we have meat. And I just grouped it in with animal products because we're going to get there. But meat, especially red and processed meats, contribute harmful saturated fats, and AEGs is what we call them, from high heat cooking. So as you cook it, it actually begins to have these toxins that ages it over time. You quickly oxidate it in the scientific world. Oxidation causes aging, stress, and breakdown of proteins. It's what makes you look older. When you are oxidizing on your face or in your body, you are aging. And so when you have this and you're doing it to a piece of meat before you eat it, and then you eat it, you're aging your body with those same toxins. You're feeding it a concentrated portion of that. And we also have the heme iron, the type of iron that is in meat, found in the blood of the animals. That is linked to oxidative stress, more aging. And that aging specifically, if you are into science at all, I'll just get into it for a minute. Your DNA strand, we want to have as solid and have integrity. It actually starts breaking off the tail of your DNA strands when we talk about oxidative stress. So that's why it's important. Dysbiosis, again, is the gut bacteria taking over when it's bad. We call it dysbiosis in the medical world. And permeability, we call that the problem of the tight gap junctions becoming so open, things just seep through like it's a sieve. Permeability. All right, so sugar. Sugar is the next one, no matter what you're looking at. That's why I have all of those other names of sugars there that exist in the world. All of them do the same thing to you. The only things that I have in my life, sometimes when I bake, that I need and I just want to give this to you guys if you like to bake too. I'm a sweet tooth person. I need my sweets. So I make healthy cakes and I eat them. And I have cupcakes and stuff. But when you want to use something like cane sugar, use coconut sugar in place of it. And always use less than they say. But do it to taste. Just do it to taste and then cook it. Hopefully you're not too much of a sweet tooth that you're overdoing it, but just use that to slowly wean off and use coconut sugar as a replacement. For just a regular white sugar taste, use stevia. And don't get it in the green form. Like, I know it's a plant. Stevia is a plant. Or you can get the sap of it to sweeten things as well. I like the sap. It comes from the Better brand, Better Stevia at Walmart. You can get a whole bottle of it and you just use 1 or 2 drops in tea, in your baking or whatever. And it just takes care of it. Don't overdo it or it gets bitter really quick. Again, to taste very slowly like a chemist. You want to do it slowly. All right, so there's a tip. I wasn't going to throw that out, but hey, there you go. But sugar fuels harmful bacteria, as you might have thought, in your gut, specifically like Candida. Candida takes over the entire body, starts making your inflammation happen, and mucus, again, it's more like a pus that's happening, and it starts actually programming your mind to not have control over what you eat. It tells you to eat all the time. No appetite control. And it can cause other issues. A lot of people, if you look at the studies, have acted as though they are insane when they are under the control of the Candida bacteria in their gut. They have no control over all kinds of impulses. So I would think God wants us to be in control, right? Be sober-minded. This includes the body a lot. All right? So anyway, candida leads to dysbiosis again and inflammation. It also worsens insulin resistance for those who are diabetic or, glucose sensitive. We need to know about this. And it worsens it. It worsens your ability to deal with insulin and sugars, reinforcing the gut damage that's already there. So, continuing on, salt. And I have personally come to realize how much salt is a problem. At my age, I actually get vertigo, like an old woman, if I have too much salt. The room starts spinning and it's all in my inner ear. My head is seeing the room spin and I'm just sick. So I'm young, but I had to learn a lot of this from my own medical issues. And I'll show you in a minute the case studies that are happening all over the world with young people now getting sicker earlier with this problem, or many of these problems I'm talking about. Sugar fuels harmful bacteria also. Salt. Salt intake disrupts your good bacteria as well. It decreases beneficial bacteria, as we said, increases the inflammatory ones, such as cytokines. Has anyone heard of cytokines? Okay, good. I won't get into that because that's a whole other topic, but please go look it up if you don't know about it. All right, you're going to have some homework from this. There are some terms that I can't get into fully, but that's not a good thing. It's certain cells all over the body that are turned on for inflammation then. They're just like light switches that are being turned on to have inflammation. All right, and so over time, this stresses the gut lining and degrades the tight junctions also. If you are always being pumped with salt, you are going to have kind of like a puffy appearance in your belly and also your face, your eyes, and you're going to have some issues. You're retaining water, in other words. And when you don't retain water, you're going to look much more young and youthful and slim. And when you're doing that to your gut lining, it's kind of like overfilling a hose constantly and sitting on the end of it and then letting it out and stretching it over and over and over again. So think of that when you're doing too much salt, because it always connects with water intake. It starts holding water so much so that it starts to bloat. You're kind of creating bloating all the time. In fact, that is what bloating is. It's too much salt. So if you're bloated all the time, it's either blockage that already exists or is there in your gut, or it's too much salt in whatever you ate. So, all right. Together, these foods, all of them, here's someone who actually discovered how much getting rid of constipation and blockage at a young age helped their arthritis onset because they were starting to get pain in their hands and their feet and their knees in their 30s. And they decided to do a cleanse for their gut and their organs, and it worked. They started to eat the fiber and drink enough water and so on. So together, to kind of conclude, these foods remove the most important protective mucus layer that you need to have. It is the most important first thing. The first defense between your gut lining and harmful substances. Gliadin, which is what is in gluten that makes it gluey. You know, you love it because it rises so nice and bounces. That's the glue in gluten. Think about it, glue, gluten, okay? Gliadin, casein, heme, sugar, and salt all raise oxidative stress levels and inflammation in the body, breaking down this mucus shield. This leaves your epithelial cells, the very cells itself of your skin down there, exposed, heightening permeability and setting the stage for disease. Okay? Even those without known sensitivities suffer long-term damage from repeated exposure to this. Now you're probably thinking, how do I eat? How do I live, right? I know, I've been there. I will be giving some clues at the very end, but the most important thing to realize is, I have to be honest. We were in a hotel, right? I had to eat their breakfast. Did I always stay away from gluten and dairy? Sometimes I can't because I need food. Otherwise, I don't have sustenance. Like I don't have reserves. I'm very tiny. I will pass out otherwise. So sometimes I have to think about, do I eat some of the things that are toxins and not pass out and be okay throughout the day? Or do I not eat, basically, from abstaining from these things? Sometimes I have to do that. And as we eat potluck together, I'm sure I'll have to do some of that too, weighing some of the poisons. Basically, choose your poison. Otherwise, if it were at my home, I'd be producing and making all my own stuff, and it would be okay. I wouldn't have to worry about gluten and dairy and meat and so on. But just so you know, we're not all perfect, and it's not like I forever stay off of these things. I try to, but I can't always. So try to be kind to yourself. It's a process. It is a journey to try to clean out your life and your diet of these things. But when you put together all these things now in a large picture view, together you have this very woman who has noticed this: constipation, gut dehydration, a depleted mucus layer, and quickly an intestinal damage as well. Many in their 20s and 30s that I've seen, and in my studies at the school I went through, are now being diagnosed with unexplained gut bleeding and early onset cancer just from this very issue. And it's all preventable. I'm telling you guys, all of this is preventable because I've done it with my patients. I've seen it work many times in my own life and with my family even. So these disruptors ripple outward. Think again, downstream. Autoimmune conditions like celiac disease, rheumatoid arthritis is actually your own autoimmune system fighting you. Fibromyalgia, thyroid issues, arthritis, neurological issues like brain fog and depression all come from what you eat as well. It programs your brain. What you do in your gut, such as, I'll just give an example, oats. If you know about dopamine, oats give you oxytocin from like giving a hug. That's the same chemical you get from giving a hug that's of love, or having a baby like God wanted you to have. So oats do that for you. That's another alternative to eating wheat. Eat your oats, but get them certified organic, because in the rolling process, usually I like rolled oats if you do too. You don't like them like whole and kind of large and round. They put wheat flour over the rolled oats usually when they're coming out in the smashing process. And so you have to get certified gluten-free ones that they haven't done that to. Okay? But like oats, they do that for you. Gluten does the opposite. It gives you depressed neurotransmitters that travel from the gut to the brain and start making you feel sad. Okay? What you eat directly correlates to what you feel also. And I can't get into that deeper, but just think about that. That's one example I have. But getting further into it, psychological disorders you have also from this. Skin flare-ups like eczema, acne, metabolic struggles like insulin resistance, and weight gain. Malabsorption, of course, when you can't take in the vitamins anymore because your microvilli aren't there anymore, right? And God only produced one area. There's certain specific areas of your gut that only collect vitamin A and vitamin B and C and D. If you don't have those anymore, you're not getting it from your food anymore. Your body can't absorb it. Now, don't go out and get a bunch of supplements necessarily, but think about repairing your gut. What I'm telling you is the consequences are profound, but avoiding gluten and dairy and meat, sugar altogether, I hope. Like I said, I've given you alternatives. Enjoy those. Use those. And limiting your salt pretty dramatically is just the precaution you need for healing your gut lining. That gets it back into working order. All right, it's not just for the sensitive, it is a vital act of protection for everybody. The only ones spared are those who abstain. Satan knows this. It's kind of like TV. He puts all these programs out there that are unhealthy just to catch you with one thing or another. He does that with food too. These are his traps that he has set. There are others, like I said, that we're going to cover in part 2 after potluck, but this is the beginning area you have to think of. These are his first traps that he lays out for you to eat and become diseased or unhealthy with. So choosing whole and unprocessed foods. Unprocessed foods also have their fibers taken out of them and are kind of like, think of concrete. It's highly processed with all of its different parts in it. And it has no more fiber or holes or anything like healthy vegetables would have or grains, and it becomes a glue again in the system. So that's why you want to make your food at home. Whole grains, full vegetables, fruits with their fiber intact, not necessarily juicing, because juicing doesn't have the fiber attached to it. And these are ways you can help yourself. Choosing millet, I don't hope you've heard of it, but please write it down. This is your alternative grains I'm listing here instead of wheat or gluten. Millet, buckwheat, quinoa if you can tolerate it. I happen to not be able to, but those who can, it's a great protein source as well. And also, let's see, your oats, those certified gluten-free oats, remember that. This all supports healing and resilience to your gut. It's equally important to eliminate sugar and the salt and embrace that whole foods, plant-based diet that naturally supports your gut healing and reduces the stress and inflammation. But as you'll come to see, guarding your gut and detox pathways are guarding your life. Join us for part 2 where we'll uncover the specific pollutants and toxins. I'll actually give you lists of things and give you the very name that they're listed under through the FDA or whatever they're listed on in a bottle. And you will start to realize what you are eating by reading the labels more carefully. All right, so are you going to let Satan have control over your body with what you eat? I know that sounds very intense, perhaps, and aggressive, but it's true. These are his attacks he's leveraging on you. Are you going to fight back and give God the control and you take control over it? That's what I want to leave you with. So thank you for listening. Thank you guys for being here.